Hello, everybody. It's Sunday night. The name of the show is Intuitive Inc., and I am Servet Hassan, still and only. So here we go. Another great show for you guys. I know I mentioned it last week, and I Sluytered his name. I did not say it correctly because it's spelled Sluyter. Can I say that? Dean, but it's actually pronounced Sluyter. Dean Sluyter is with us today. And I teased you about the book last week. It's called Fearless, Living Beyond Fear, Anxiety, Anger, and Addiction. Hoping all of you would tune in because I know every one of you's got one of those going on. So anyway, we have him on the show tonight, Dean Sluyter. He's taught natural methods of meditation. I can't talk. We're going to start again. He has taught natural methods of meditation and awakening throughout the U.S. since 1970. So he's been doing this for a long time at colleges and yoga studios and corporate offices. But part of the interesting thing is he's also done it in prisons. So we're going to talk to him about that. One of his best-selling books is called Natural Meditation. So we're going to touch on that, but we're mostly going to be talking about this new book, Fearless. He's been in the New York Times, on Coast to Coast AM, the Oprah Magazine, and on and on and on and on. So here he is. Dean Sluyter, welcome. Thank you for joining me tonight.
Thank you. It's great being here.
Thank you. I loved your book. I read it, and I learned something. And that's a huge compliment because I read so many of these books. I can't even tell you. And I'm like, okay, I get it. But yours, it was entertaining. It was fun, and it was extremely informative. So congratulations on that. I'm going to highly recommend this book to a lot of people because I'm the one that's always walking around. You have to meditate. Just like I had a guru once from India like 100 years ago, and anything you asked this gentleman, he was lovely, and I learned so much. But 99% of the time, whatever you asked him, he'd say, meditate, and then he'd go away.
Right. And, in a way, I would completely agree. That really is the answer to 99% of your questions. But if you just keep saying it that way, people don't necessarily hear it. So what I learned to do is, as you say, be entertaining. Fortunately, that's easy for me. I was just kind of, that's who I am.
Right.
It helps that I was a high school teacher for 33 years.
Oh.
And when you're going to get kids to learn about Chaucer and Shakespeare and how to use a semicolon, one thing that I learned early on is when you really want them to remember something, just before you make the important point, you make them laugh. Because when people laugh, that's like a meditative state. When people laugh, they relax, they go into a state of receptivity, they get a shot of endorphins, a feeling of well-being, and that's prepared the field for you to plant the seed of that information that you want them to hear.
Right.
So, what I do in all my books and in all my workshops, which I do all over the country, is we tell stories, we tell jokes, we laugh, sometimes we bring in some songs, and somehow in the context of all that, we learn these meditative methods that lighten up your life.
Right. It's true. It does work. I mean, and that's how I remembered a lot of things like affirmations and things early in my early days, because you do kind of, I would walk around singing everything I want and need is coming my way, over and over, but I would sing it, because it just it just came out, but it made it, it programmed my brain, and that's why commercials do it. I mean,
sure. If things rhyme and if they have rhyme and they have rhythm, number one, it makes them easy to remember. Number two, it makes them sound true. There's something about hearing that rhyme that, well, it must be true. It rhymes so beautifully. Sometimes when I'm teaching meditation, I'll just say, whatever's there, just rest aware.
Just rest aware, whatever's there. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And
Yeah.
that works, I'm sure.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah,
it does.
and it's true
that really sums it all up.
Right.
You're feeling sleepy, fine. You're having lots of thoughts, fine. You're having no thoughts, fine. You're feeling tranquility, fine. You're feeling anxiety, fine. Whatever's there, just rest aware, which is the opposite of what most people think meditation has to be about. They think it's this big Herculean task. It's like, I got to push this boulder up the mountain. I have to clear my mind. I have to learn how to concentrate. I have to control my breath. I have to sit rigidly. All those things that people think are meditation are really distraction. And the things that people think are distractions, like, oh, but there's a dog barking outside. Oh, there are these thoughts in the background of my mind. Those things they think are the distractions, those are the meditation. It's just
right.
Whatever's there, and whatever's there, just rest aware.
Wow.
And the funny thing that happens is when you take that approach, when you stop trying, when you stop forcing and straining, you just leave the mind alone, and it settles down by itself.
True, absolutely. Because someone said to me, well, I can't empty my mind. It can't go blank. And I said, right. The last time my mind was blank, I was in a coma. So, that's not the idea. Don't try to do, because that's stressful. Then, and that's sort of counterintuitive to try to stress yourself out.
It's counterproductive. It defeats its own purpose. When the Buddha sat under the tree for 40 days and finally attained, complete awakening, and it's very clear, it's recorded very clearly, he didn't say at the end, aha, I have finally made my mind a blank. What he said was, aha, everything's fine just as it is.
Right.
That's what I've seen. I've seen to let it be as it is.
Right, exactly. And you're right. Rest aware. That whatever's there, be aware. It's a good way to think of it. And rhymes do work. That reminds me of a joke. I have to tell it. There's a genie that comes along and gives this guy 3 wishes, and he wishes for money, and the second wish he wishes for, great health, and the third, and then he said, now I'm going to think about this third wish, and then suddenly he thinks of, I wish I were an Oscar Mayer wiener. And then that's where he ends. Okay, all right, sorry. All right, I'm sorry. All right, back to this book. Like I said, I learned a lot. So we're going to talk about natural meditation because that's what sort of revolutionized your life, which is great. But I want to, the first question I have is, fearless, why you brought in fear, obviously, I mean, that's huge, but you also incorporated anxiety, anger, and addiction all into the same.
Right.
Why did you do that? Can I ask? Because that's quite a task.
Please.
Go ahead.
Right. They're all connected. They really all come from the same root, and the root is the feeling of separateness, the feeling of isolation. It's as if we each say at some point in life, I'm just this little wave on the surface of the ocean, and I feel so disconnected, and I feel so threatened, and I see all the waves sooner or later just sink back into the ocean, or they break against the shore, and then it's game over. In other words, every little wave eventually has to die. And all the other waves, there's so many that seem like they're bigger than me, or better looking than me, or richer, they got more fish in them than me, or something. And what all the great enlightened sages, whether it's the Buddha or Jesus or Socrates or Lao Tzu or Al-Halaj or the Baal Shem Tov, all the different traditions, what all the great sages have seen is that, no, you're not a disconnected little wave. There's no such thing as a wave without the ocean. Every wave is just an expression of the ocean. And if you really look carefully, and really I live in Santa Monica here near the ocean, so I can walk for 10 minutes and then really do this. And I've spent a lot of time looking at the beach and watching the waves and trying to decide, okay, exactly where does the ocean leave off and the wave begin? And the more you look, the more you realize there is no such place. There is no separation. And what we start to experience, not just as an idea or an attitude, but as a direct experience in the same way that you're experiencing my voice right now.
Right.
You start to experience, okay, I'm not just this separate little entity that's isolated in time and space. I am really just, there's nothing but this one thing, this one kind of ocean of beingness or ocean of awareness, which expresses over here as Dean and over here as Servette and over here as someone else. So, fear, anxiety, anger, addiction, they all stem from that false sense of being isolated and being essentially mortal. Or sooner, in a sense, all of those anxieties and fears, angers, in a way that kind of the root fear is the fear of annihilation. We're all afraid, how can we do anything? How can we be fully enjoy in anything knowing I'm going to die? Everyone that I love, everyone I know is going to die. It's going to be game over. But somehow when you think of the sages, you think of Socrates and Jesus and the Buddha, without, even if we don't clearly understand what their enlightenment was about, we somehow intuitively know they didn't have a lot of anxiety about death. We know
Right.
that somehow they knew that was okay, that what dies when what we call death is, the body may die, but what we are doesn't die.
Right. We are eternal. I do believe that. But do you also think fear of death is huge? But I also think most fear actually stems also from the fear of the future. It's kind of like, well, will I get the job? Then when you get the job, will I keep the job? Will they fire me tomorrow? Am I going to have the job? Will I get the man? Will I get the woman? And if I get them, will they leave me? Do you agree with that as well? That it's
absolutely. Gilda Radner used to say years ago on Saturday Night Live, it's always something. It's all.
I loved her.
It's always. People of a certain age will recall that.
It's true.
It's always the next thing, and we think, okay, once I get that thing straightened out, then I'll be fine. But then it's the next thing, and then it's the next thing.
Right.
And it's like, how many times do you have to go through that cycle till you start to figure it out? And again, all the sages pointed to that. When Jesus said, don't take no thought for the things of the morrow. The things of the morrow will take care of themselves. Another sage, Shantideva, a great enlightened Buddhist sage of the 6th century, and I quote this in the book. There's one of my very favorite quotes of all time. If there's a solution to the problem, what's the point of worrying?
Yeah, exactly.
If there's no solution to the problem, what's the point of worrying?
Exactly. Well, I always think of the Mark Twain quote too, which I'm going to paraphrase because I don't know if I know it exactly, but he said, I've had a lot of worries in my life, most of which never happened. It's true. And then you also had a quote in there from Oprah that she was on Stephen Colbert, and I know he teaches Sunday school too, and she just picked her favorite quote, and it was, I say to you, do not worry, for who among you by worrying can add a hair to his head or an hour to the span of his life? That's a quote from the Bible. And I thought, this is true, because it's all about, worrying is such a big thing. We should talk about that, because really, honestly, there is no point, like you just said from those quotes. But on a practical level, what you talk about it in your book. So explain one of the ways that you help people stop worrying.
Right. And there's two approaches to all of these things, and I talk about this in the book. What we call method or practice, and what we call view or insight. So method or practice is techniques, is things that you do. And then insight or view is getting your perspective straight, noticing where you've been misunderstanding things and dropping that misunderstanding. So let's start here first for a moment with the view of worry. I think most people whether they've thought it through much or not, they're under the impression that if they're not worrying, they're not being conscientious. That if they're not worrying, that by worrying they're proving to others or proving to themselves that they're not flaky, that they're being responsible. And if you think about it clearly for about 5 seconds, you realize, no, that's not really taking responsibility, because worrying doesn't produce anything. It doesn't produce any effect. In fact, if anything, it uses up energy uselessly, and it gets you, by getting you upset, it interferes with your clear seeing of what are the real solutions to the problems. How can you really help yourself and help others? So I like to quote, I have a chapter titled, "Would It Help?" And that's a reference to the Steven Spielberg film Bridge of Spies, the true story of Rudolf Abel, the Soviet spy who was captured in New York in the 50s, and he's put on trial for his life. Fortunately, Tom Hanks is his lawyer, and when Tom Hanks visits him the first time in prison, he says, the Americans and the Russians, both sides would like to see you in the electric chair. And he thinks about it for a second. He's played by Mark Rylance. He's great. Thinks for a second, he says, "All right." And Tom Hanks says, "You don't seem worried." And he considers that for a moment, and he says, "Would it help?"
Exactly. I
read
that part, yeah.
Yeah, that's the mantra there. That's the sword of discrimination to cut through your worry. When you see yourself doing that, just ask that question, would it help? Now, don't try to suppress the worry. Suppressing emotions doesn't help. Suppress means to press it down. People press this stuff down often into their lower backs, and then it manifests as back pain because they're trying to push it away. But just ask that question, see it clearly, let it go. So that's from the side of view. From the side of method or practice, there's all kinds of things we can do. One of them is, this is I think the second chapter of the book, breathe through your feet.
Oh, I loved that. That's one of the things I learned, because I read so many books, and I do the same thing I'm learning over and over again. But this time I was like, and I tried it last night when I was going to sleep. So explain to people out there what that is. I did, and it did help. It really helped a lot.
It does. It's so simple. And when it comes to practice, simpler is better. So it's very simply, you're sitting there. It's good to try this at first when you're just maybe sitting at home, and then later on you can do it while you're driving, while you're whatever. And that is, as you breathe in, just imagine you're breathing in through the soles of your feet. As you breathe out, imagine you're breathing out through the soles of your feet. That's it. So whether your breathing is deep or shallow, slow or fast, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. But the moment that you start to do that, you'll see. My favorite quote from the Buddha is "Come and see," right? Not come and believe. Don't take my word for it. Don't take Dean's word for it or Struvet's word for it. Try something, see what happens. So come and see. Try breathing in through the soles of your feet. Breathe out through the soles of your feet. And what I experience is that creates a space around whatever situation I'm in. If I'm driving on the 405 and, traffic is bad and people are cutting me off and I'm about to do something rude that may really create some trouble, some road rage situation, just breathe in through the soles of the feet, breathe out through the soles of the feet. And now there's a part of me instantly that's not caught up.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's something you can do easily anywhere. Because I know I've studied so many meditation techniques, and I'm sure you have too, even if you don't, just to get where you are, you must have. And one of them was to envision your hands not there. But you close your eyes, and it takes that meditation takes your mind off of everything else onto to that. But it's not easy to do, and it's something you can't do when you're driving. Certainly, you're not gonna, and many others where you're breathing, you're slowing your breathing down. Sometimes you can do that when you're in a,
Right.
but it's hard to hold one nostril with a thumb and a fork. You know what I mean? It's like breathing through your feet is easy.
It's simple. And as you say, you can do it while you're falling asleep. Usually it'll help people fall asleep. You can, I do say, and I say this several times in the book, it's good to do the fire drill before the fire. So sometime while you're just sitting around with, no emergency, no problem, you practice that, breathing through the feet, so you can go to that instantly. And then when the thing comes up, when the road rage situation is coming up, or when you're getting up to speak in front of the classroom or the business conference and you're feeling the stage fright, just automatically that kicks in and creates some space around the situation, and you can relax into that space. And, as we say in the title of the book, and I want to point out, the title of the book is not fearless. It's two words. It's fearless. I don't know anyone who's fearless, and I met the Dalai Lama, and he jokes about how he's scared of worms, but it doesn't seem to bother him much. If we set up the goal of being fearless, and I know there's a lot of books and slogans and so forth, that word fearless has become very popular, but that just becomes another thing to fail at. But if we can just fear less, I think of our fears and our anxieties as like, big, they look like big monsters, but they're really big inflated balloons, like in the Macy's Day Parade.
Right.
And if we can just all it takes is a tiny little pin, put one little hole in that thing, and it starts to deflate. And after a while, it may still be there, but now it's just this little deflated, soft little thing, bouncing around your ankles.
Right, exactly. Well, that's another joke thing too. The woman who has a nightmare night after night about a monster chasing her and not sleeping, and finally she confronts the monster in her dream and says, "Why are you chasing me?" And the monster says, "I don't know, lady, it's your dream." And then, then it ends because she's, now it's not a big scary monster anymore. It's just a So I get what you're saying. And you have a chapter too called The Monster Under the Bed, which is about that. So, and you explain that really well. It is, and did you start with meditation? Is this how this whole journey for you began?
Well, it started for me actually in way before I knew about meditation. It started for me in childhood with some kind of spontaneous experiences. To tell you the truth, when I was about 4 years old, I was with my mom. I was growing up on Long Island at the time. And she was visiting a friend in the living room, and they were doing this, boring grown-up lady talk. So I wandered across the living room, and I found a book on the bookshelf or the coffee table or something. I opened it up, and it immediately opened to a page with a picture of a guy sitting cross-legged in meditation. And there was this instant, and it was very quiet, very matter-of-fact, but a very clear recognition. And the thought that came into my mind was, oh, yeah, that's me. That's what I'm here to do. Somehow I knew that. Don't ask me how.
Well, it was in you. It's a part of who you are.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And somehow it was there, and I recognized it. And then a little later in childhood, I had some spontaneous experiences, which later on, in retrospect, after I did some reading, I realized, oh, this is what they call satori or samadhi, transcendental consciousness. When I was walking around feeling like everyone else had a face and I had no face, when I felt like I was opened up on top instead of closed, I wasn't zipped shut. And then I had interesting, and I actually wrote about this in another one of my books. When I was 12 years old, my mom had sent me out to the garage, to our Nash Rambler station wagon, to pick up all the toys and books and comic books that I and my two brothers had left there. And my mind, and even at the age of 12, I was caught up in worrying. What about this and what about that and blah, 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 blah. And the next thing that I picked up was a Mad magazine.
Oh.
And some listeners will know that every
Me.
issue of Mad magazine had a picture of their grinning idiot mascot, Alfred E. Newman, and his motto, remember his motto, what me worry?
Exactly.
Right. Now, believe it or not, I saw this, what me worry, and for some reason, all of a sudden, just bang, my mind stopped. I realized this thing, I'm just going round and round, like chasing my own tail. This is called worry. And on some level, I've chosen to do this, and I can choose to not do this. And I stopped, and it was like the top of my head opened up. It was like the heavens opened up. And really, I went into a state of blissful, what I read about, later, words for this, samadhi, satori, just complete bliss for the whole rest of the day and the evening. So these things happening in childhood, then, later on I started reading the books and realizing, okay, I'm not the only person who's experienced this, and there are methods for accessing it, so it doesn't just happen once in a while by accident, but you can be dipping into that zone of openness, of bliss, of just infinite okayness every day, and by practicing regularly, after a while you can start having at least one foot in that all the time.
Right. Well, it's like a muscle. It's just like working out your body. You have to. The more you do it, the better. Like for me, when people say, "How do you?" They can't find the time. I'm like, that's to me is like saying you don't have time to brush your teeth. That's how it would feel to me. I would feel like I didn't. I'm a wreck by noon if I don't meditate first thing in the morning. I am. I'm bumping into walls and I'm talking to myself. And I'm like, why am I doing this? And then I realize, oh my God, that one day I forgot, or I didn't forget. I just got caught up in something or I'm traveling and it wasn't my routine. And then absolutely. We're going to open the lines up. We're already halfway through the show here. So again, the name of the book is Fear Less, the 2 words. Living Beyond Fear, Anxiety, Anger, and Addiction. Our guest today is Dean Sluyter. It's Sluyter. It's an excellent book. I highly recommend it because it's not just all about meditation. There's some really good tips in there for dealing with fear and anxiety and addiction and also anger. So, if any one of you out there has a question for Dean, call in now, 949-313-8880. He can answer any questions you have about any of this that we've been discussing, or if you have anxiety or an addiction or fear of any kind, including you being addicted to your cell phone, call now, because this is the man to ask. I want to mention your website too. It's fearlessbook.net. And you also have another website, which is deanwords.com. But I imagine that the one on the Fearless book is the fearlessbook.net. So you can find out anything. Are any of your speaking engagements and that type of thing, your workshops, on the website?
Yes. In fact, they're all on the website. There's a page there with my schedule. And this book is actually being published just this week. The official publication date is day after tomorrow, this Tuesday.
Yay!
So, and we're having our big book launch party here in Los Angeles on Tuesday night. So anyone who's in the L.A. area, you can come to Diesel, a bookstore at the Brentwood Country Mart, 26th and San Vicente at 6:30 Tuesday. And again, you can get all that information, the date and time, from my website, fearlessbook.net. And then I'm going to be on tour. I'll be going up to Portland, Oregon. I'll be in Austin, Texas. I will be in places all over. I'll be in Massachusetts a couple of times. I'll be in New Jersey, several other, Cincinnati, several places. So, and if I don't have a workshop or an appearance coming up in your town, you can a couple things you can do. One is invite me, set something up. I'll be there. If you build it, I will come.
Good.
If you have a yoga studio or a wellness center or you work at a university, invite me. I speak I speak sometimes at corporations. I've given meditation workshops at a car dealership in New Jersey.
We have a call here. Okay, we have a call here. Hold on. Hello, caller. Hello, caller. Can you hear me?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Good. Dean, can you hear the caller?
Yes.
Go ahead. Sure, go ahead.
Okay. Well, hello, Dean and Servette. I've enjoyed the program so far. And a question for you, Dean. I've often thought that fear is underneath anger. It underlies anger. And so I often also think that fear can create our anxiety. So I am looking forward to trying your meditation techniques to master my fear and my worry and anxiety. But I just wondered what your opinion was on anger being the result of fear.
Oh, absolutely. I think you're absolutely right. The reason that we lash out at things is we feel threatened. And you can see a lot of it in the world situation today. You can see a lot of it in the politics today. When people feel scared, if they feel that their way of life is under attack, and I'm not going to name any names. I'm not going to.
Okay.
But anytime you have a sizable portion of the population that feels that their way of life or their values is under attack, is being threatened, then there are always politicians to come along and exploit that and help them turn that fear into anger. Because when you feel angry, then you feel more that you're mastering it. You're going to crush your enemies rather than your enemies are going to crush you. The problem is they're doing it over there on the other side of the valley where the other tribe is assembling, and then we wind up with the kind of world situation that we have now. So as far as I'm concerned, when we do these methods, we're not just lighting up the light bulb of our own life, but once you get the light bulb of your own life illuminated inside, you start lighting up the whole room. In other words, you're not just creating personal peace, you're creating world peace.
Oh, I like that idea. Okay. Well, thank you.
Also, let me mention, caller, that if you go to my website, there's a page on my website called Meditate Now. And on that page, Meditate Now, I have guided meditation audio tracks. And they're free. You can just stream it right off the page there, and you'll have me walking you through the meditation, just showing you how easy and simple it is. And it's especially at the beginning, it's much easier when someone else is in the driver's seat and you can just sit back and relax in the passenger seat.
Oh, that sounds lovely. Thank you.
Did that help? Did that answer your question?
Yes, very much. Thank you.
Good. Thanks for calling in. I appreciate it. You take care. I didn't get her name, but that was an excellent question, and I'm glad you helped her. Because you do have a lot of, you've even taught, you've gone into prisons and done this, right?
Yeah. I love working with prisoners. In some ways, they're my favorite people to work with, mainly because they get the seriousness of the situation. Sometimes I'll do a workshop and people will come and go, and you can just say, well, it's a little bit of entertainment. It was a rainy day and they couldn't go to the play tennis or something, so I'll try this meditation thing. But the prisoners, they get the Buddha said, do your practice like your hair's on fire.
Right.
And for prisoners, their hair, actually all of us, our hair is on fire, but most of us are able to convince ourselves that it isn't. Prisoners get that their hair is on fire, and they get that this is the stuff that saves their life, saves their sanity. So working with them is great. And also what's great is that they have pretty much zero control over their immediate environment. The rest of us can kind of fool ourselves into, well, once I get a better job, then that will solve my problems. Or once I get once I trade my car in, or once I move to the other side of town, then that is the thing that's going to make things okay. And all those things, of course, they have importance on their level, but there's still something that's not okay, the ultimate okayness. It doesn't happen. There's, like we were saying before, it's always something. It's like a pebble in your shoe. And when you're in prison, you can't delude yourself into thinking you'll solve your problems by changing things on the material level, because you can't change anything on the material level. You may have to deal with a cellmate who smokes cigarettes all day, and you hate cigarette smoke. Mm-hmm. So you really have to find your peace on the inside.
Well, true. And some, a lot of us are prisoners, even if we're not in prison. We do it to ourselves, and then like you said, you can't just, put new curtains on the prison you've made for yourself and think it's going to be okay. Right. It doesn't work that way,
right.
And you said, you say it in your book too, infinite okayness is what it mm-hmm. come down to. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't a pebble in the shoe in the book. It was more two thorns in the shoe. Because remember when you talk about the 12-step programs and all of that. So can you touch on that really quickly? Because a lot of people are addicted to things, and it's not necessarily drugs or opioids or which is a drug, mm-hmm. or your cell phone mm-hmm. or anything. Sometimes we're just addicted to emotions and
right. We're addicted to our stories.
Right.
You hear people telling the same old stories. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, well, this struggle with my parents, but I say, your parents, how old are you? Well, I'm 55. Where do your parents live? Oh, they've been dead for 20 years.
Right.
Well, how are you still fighting with your parents? People are addicted to their stories, and they know it makes them miserable, but they know how to do it. They've had a lot of practice. And,
right.
Actually, I think one of the most powerful things in the book, there's a chapter titled "Drop Your Thoughts." Mm-hmm. And for some people, this is the most powerful method. You can kind of remind yourself, you can clap your hands in front of your eyes, and then for just 5 seconds, drop your thoughts. That's it, 5 seconds. And that doesn't mean that they have to go away, but it means you relax your grip on them. For 5 seconds, you don't take them seriously. For 5 seconds, you don't engage with them. It's just for 5 seconds, you let them be background noise. So that then, that whole story, I've been carrying this thing around all day, all my life. Well, there's been at least 5 seconds when you haven't been carrying it around. And every time you do that, you're poking a hole in it. You're reducing its grip on you.
Right. And I think you use an example in this book as well where you get out a ball and you grasp that ball really tightly. And that's
you walk around the room grasping that ball, and you can still see everything in the room. You can look out the window, you can look at the rug, look at the ceiling, but it's all being filtered through that and affected by that experience of grasping that ball real hard. Then we do the same thing, but you relax your grip on the ball, and you walk around and you look at the same room. Now, maybe the ball falls out of your hand, maybe it doesn't. It doesn't matter. As long as you relax your grip on it, you're no longer filtering things through that stress and tension. So we do the same thing with our thoughts, do the same thing with your stories. Just relax your grip on it. Now, when we getting back to addiction, mm-hmm. there's a number of people who are, recovering addicts who've discovered, here in Santa Monica, we have a meditation group. It meets every other Tuesday night. It's open to everyone. It's free. And a lot of people come to that or come to my workshops around the country. I had one girl who came a couple of times, didn't say anything. As she was about to leave her second time, she very quietly came up to me and said, I just wanted to let you know, I'm a heroin addict. I've been in recovery for 6 months. In the meditation tonight, I became so deeply relaxed. It was so delicious and healing that I didn't think I could feel that way again in this lifetime without drugs.
Right. Wow.
And, to hear something like that, it's so moving, and you realize this is, here in LA where there's a lot of 12-step programs, and you always know where the meetings are because you see people outside on the sidewalk smoking cigarettes.
Right.
Exactly.
Drinking coffee and smoking, right.
Yeah, right. And by the way, you mentioned the opioid problem, which kills a lot of people. Cigarettes kill 10 times as many people as opioids.
Yeah, I know.
So unless we are tuning into that place of deep, the kingdom of heaven within, if you want to call it that, nirvana, if you want to call it that, infinite okayness, as you mentioned, is the phrase I like to use because it's culturally neutral. It's very matter of fact. Unless you're tuning into that place where things are infinitely okay, which is already within you. We're not creating it. We're just settling down into it, noticing, this has always been here. I can access this anytime I want. Unless you're doing that, then your addictions, we're just moving them around. We're just, I'll stop being addicted to this and I'll smoke cigarettes instead, or I'll eat, cookies instead, or whatever.
Right, exactly. That's putting new curtains on your prison cell, or moving the furniture around on the Titanic, however you want to, it's not actually doing anything except moving it to another. And one of the things that the reason I meditate every day and it helps me so much, and it's key, I think, too, is relax. It's relaxing about life.
So simple.
It's just, and that's why when you said it earlier, that people think if you're not worrying that you're not being responsible, because I get that all the time, because I go, they'll say, well, what are you going to do about that? And I'm like, I don't know. And they're like, what do you mean you don't know?
Right.
What are you going to do?
Yeah.
What are you going to do? And I'm like,
yeah.
I don't know. When the time is right, things will evolve as they should. And really, honestly, we think we have control of things, and most of the time we don't.
Once years ago, it was when my daughter was in college, and I was driving her and her boyfriend somewhere, and we were late to get there, and I'm kind of driving in a tense way, and her boyfriend said, what's going on? I said, well, we're late. And he said, no, you're never late till you get there.
It's so true. Did she marry this man?
No, she didn't. But she married a guy who was even better. They were just here visiting
but
us,
that's true.
She married the best guy in the world. Yeah.
Oh, that's lovely. I love that.
Yeah, no, it's lovely. You're never late till you get there. You never. And this is where Jesus says, sufficient unto the day is the evil thereof. In other words, tomorrow's problems, you'll deal with them tomorrow, and they're never quite the way that you were anticipating them anyway. It's one thing to prepare. It's one thing, I'm going to have to fly on, in 2 weeks from today, so I better make my reservation on the plane today. But as far as, what's going to happen? Am I going to be scared on the plane? Am I going to blah, blah? It's just a waste of energy.
It is. And then that's where, you talk about that when people are talking about loss and or illness or, things that really, deep change, like crises, I guess. And, you can't control those things. What you can do.
No, you can't.
Go ahead.
Right. You can't control them, but what you can address is what you bring to it. The big teaching for me in this lifetime was the death of my first wife when she was dying of colon cancer. And the first thing is, she would go for chemo, and she was, first of all, she was a beautiful woman, a former model.
Right.
And she had this just hilarious sense of humor. And she would go for the chemo, and with chemo you sit there. So sitting while like me, she also was a meditation teacher. We met on a meditation retreat, in fact, and she everyone in the oncology unit was so impressed with her sense of humor and her grace and her balance that they had her come back and teach the whole staff how to meditate.
Oh, how wonderful. Yeah, it's not.
Yeah.
I just finished chemo. The people out there that know, last year, towards the end of last year, actually, and I had 3 months of. You're sitting in the same chair basically for 6 to 7 hours. That's a long time to have an IV in you that's drip, drip, drip. And and I've seen people in that room cry, and some break down, some are laughing. And a lot of times they'd say to me, "What are you doing?" And I'd say, "I'm meditating." And I'd give them tips and try to teach them. And it really helps. It really does. It's
absolutely.
And why not? What else are you doing?
Right. Right. And it doesn't have to be chemo. It can be, in the dentist chair. Mm-hmm. It can be, sitting at the red light. Here's an experience everyone has had. Mm-hmm. You're sitting at the red light, and again, you're running late, and you're sitting there with your grip tightening on the wheel as you just slightly strain forward, trying to make the red light turn green faster.
Yeah.
You know that experience?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, has it ever worked?
No. Doesn't work when I bang my head on the steering wheel either.
It doesn't work, and I absolutely promise you, and everyone listening to this is my personal guarantee. I absolutely promise from right now until the end of your life, you will never, ever make the light turn green 1 nanosecond faster.
That's right.
And if you really get what I'm saying, you will get that it's deeply liberating to know that. Because as Willie Nelson said, fortunately, we're not in control. We're not in control, so you can just let that stuff go. And you can sit back at the red light and go, oh, it's an opportunity to breathe in, breathe out, sit back, and and even rather than stressing about the fact that it's a red light for me, oh, look at all those happy people going, on the cross street with the green light. Oh, how lovely for them. Let me congratulate them.
Well, that's true. And also in your book, you have a really good tip too, because I tell people all the time, smile, because it really does. I mean, I'm not talking about plastering a fake smile on your face, but one of the things you said in your book that you recommend is that you just have people say, "Wee," because
that's my favorite mantra.
Yeah, because you can't really say that without feeling good. So I tried it.
I challenge everyone out there. You just 3 times, and each time you throw your hands up and say, "Wee!" Do that 3 times, and then try to be depressed.
Exactly. You can't. Our minds can only have one thought at a time. It can only be depressed or it can feel good. It can't do both at the same time. So, absolutely. And I tried it. I tried the walking thing too. There's pictures in this book that have actually show like touching the inside of your ankle. And then, there's all kinds of amazing things in this book. We're running out of time. I don't know if there's a caller out there that wants to call in with another question. We need to do this again, Dean. Okay? Because it's like we're down to the few minutes. We're down to the last few minutes. So if somebody has a burning desire question in them, call 949-313-8880. We could probably take one more quick question. I got caught up with this wonderful man, Dean Sluyter, and then forgot. So, and like I said, we should do it again. But if not, you guys get the book, Fear Less, 2 words, Living Beyond Fear, Anxiety, Anger, and Addiction. And don't lie to me, all of you have experienced one of those or are experiencing one of those at some time. And it really helps. There's some really great, one of the ones I loved, and we didn't even get to talk about this, is the sweetest dog in the world. That's an excellent exercise. And I have the sweetest dog in the world. And I did these things. I breathed through my feet. I did the wee thing for 3 times, and it really helped. And I sat down with my dog, or, you could do it with a cat. I just imagined that she was listening to me, and then, it's a great exercise. And then what would she be saying to me about my issues?
Yep.
Other than
Yep.
I'm a stupid human.
Yeah, and what's great about the dog is actually they don't say anything. They don't need to. They just look at you with those certain dogs. You know, they look at you with those just eyes of pure love. And you know, if you could just love yourself the way that dog loves you, and they just listen in your mind, in this exercise, you're just pouring out your whole problem, your whole sad story, and let that doggy take it in through his or her loving eyes into their loving doggy heart, and just explode that problem into space, just evaporate it into space.
Exactly. And I wanted you to explain that a little better, because I just went off and then I went, okay, that didn't make much sense. But I really honestly, for the people listening out there, you didn't hear this from me, but my dog Harper writes all my books. So every single one, because she lays next to me on my feet, and I go, "What do you think of that?" I get this look like,
great.
I don't know. It works for me. So it's my God, I have a photo in the book of my guru, which is my 2-year-old grandson. And it's a picture of him, his first time at the aquarium, looking at just all the shimmering, the jellyfish and the fish and all that. And he's just in a state of rapture, just, oh, wow. And I look at that picture, and that's why I share it with the readers, because this is how you do it. You just relax, you let go, you open, you look around, you say, wow. Right. Right. I think, and there's a quote in the book too. I think it's a Thoreau quote where he would walk in the morning and he would walk to the same place, but he'd always walk there like it was the first time he was going there. You know,
right.
And that's kind of how we should approach everything. And again, relax. Because really, honestly, I mean, and I think you talked about what a great actress Grace Kelly was. Because someone said, maybe it was Alfred Hitchcock or something, that she was so completely relaxed and in the moment. And
yeah, it was Cary Grant, and he said, you know, I've worked with everyone. I've worked with Hepburn, I've worked with it, and Grace Kelly, she was pure relaxation. She was the best. And again, if people think, being tense, being worried is what makes you effective, it's exactly the opposite.
It's true. It's so true. Wow, you know, we've run out of time here, and I'm blown away because I have 92 more pages of questions, and we're not going to get to them. But, you know, I'd like to do a meditation show just on meditation because it's really hard for people. So will you come back and do that with me?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and again, for people that may not have heard me say this a little while ago, if you go to my website, fearlessbook.net, there's a page, Meditate Now, where I've got guided meditation audio tracks which you can stream. It's completely free, and there I'll be guiding you in the meditation.
Yes, it's fearlessbook.net. Awesome. We don't have any more now we don't have time for callers, but I do have a text from a caller or listener who's saying, don't tell any more jokes. Apparently and then they did haha. So, well, okay. I hear you out there. I'll cut it out. But you know what it was? I just had fun. I'm having a great time. They're kidding. So I hope they're kidding. I don't know. But anyway, a listener from Canada, Toronto, said, cut the jokes. Anyway, you're being listened to. So I do love, and actually, I learned a lot. The book is done in such a practical way. It's easy to understand and the methods work. And like I said, I hope that there's someone out there that's not experiencing anger or addiction or fear or anxiety, but most of us do at some point. Or we go through challenges. Like I was diagnosed with a very rare form of ovarian cancer last year, and that's a challenge because, boy, I thought I was awakened, and I got woke bigger even. And amazing the places I've gone in my meditation that I've never been before, So it's nothing you're going to master in a day or two. I've been doing it for 45 years, I think, So it's like a muscle. It's something you have to practice. It's called a practice for a reason, a spiritual practice. And this is an excellent book for that. I really recommend it highly. I do. Yep. So anything?
Yep. Let me just say that I would agree with that. What you're saying about that, it's like a muscle. You want to exercise it every day. But all of these metaphors that we use, there's always one place where the metaphor breaks down. And in this case, when you say it's like a muscle, that sounds like it's something you have to work at, that you have to strain at. And really, this is the opposite. This is just getting into the habit of sitting down every day, as you said before, just like brushing your teeth. It's good to pick a time every day when you sit down. And it doesn't have to be for long, just 10 minutes, 5 minutes, even 1 minute. And it's the opposite of straining your muscles. It's just letting go.
Right. That's a good point. Right. Really good point. And I think you said it, or I read it somewhere, and probably in the book here, that, and it's true, awakening is not coming out of it. It's coming out of what's false, not adding to it. It's subtracting things. Awakening is. It's coming out of what's not true. Right? Do you agree with that?
One great 20th century sage, Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj, said, "Don't try to understand. It's enough that you don't misunderstand."
Yes, there you go. Perfect way to end the show, Dean. I've just had a great time, really good time. Dean Sluyter. It's spelled Sluyter. Get his book. You've been a great guest. Thank you so much for joining me tonight on a Sunday evening. I appreciate it. Take care. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye. Well, that was a really great show. I love him, and I could talk to him for hours, and we don't have hours. Now we only have a couple minutes. So I used up all the time, so I can't really go on and on about much. So I'm just going to say his website again, which is fearlessbook.net. He also has another website called deanwords.com. He's doing all kinds of appearances and everything all over, so check him out. And I'm starting to do appearances all over. I think April 8th, I'm in Laguna Hills at Awakenings. I'll be sending out information on that. It'll also be on my website. I am at servethassan.com, servethassan.com. And the blogs and all that's going to be new. The website's actually under construction as well. It's still up, the old one. But there's a new website coming very soon. It's being worked on as we speak. And I've got all kinds of things on there, like online courses and things like that will be coming up as well. A new blog, a new book that I'm working on that's coming along really fast, so we're doing that as well. I've got all kinds of things, and I'm just going to end the show now. Be you to the full, which is what is truly beautiful. And that is all about relaxing into yourself and accepting yourself exactly as you are. And then you get rid of things like anger and anxiety and addiction and fear in general, because you're just being you. And when that happens, life happens. And it happens easily. So get out there and be you to the full. Thank you, everybody. And join me next week for another great show. Take care. Good night.